Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we're going to be doing the first of probably many Rayquaza EX builds. It's May the 4th today, so I felt like it was pretty appropriate to show you the new dominant force in the Pokemon trading card game. For those of you who got that reference, good on you. This is the first Rayquaza build I'm bringing to you guys using Virizion and Munna to try and help balance out our Seismitoad matchup on the whole. I'll talk about different variants of Seismitoad as I go along in terms of how strong or weak we are against these matchups. But overall, I feel like the deck's pretty good, so let's get straight into it. We're playing the three Rayquaza EXs, of course. We're using the colourless one because Intensifying Burn still does good damage. It's notable that against stuff like Toadpuff, even Toad Garbodor that will run a lot of hammers, Intensifying Burn for just a single colourless energy allows us to still do 60 damage and threaten 3 shots on Toads. I mean, that doesn't sound perfect, but their output isn't too great either, thanks to our own Virizion stopping them poisoning us. So actually we can trade fairly favourably with Toads, even when we're just in this form. So that's good to bear in mind. Next up we have the 3 Mega. Of course, the whole deck is centred around this card. 220 HP, Lightning weakness is terrible against Manectric, and it's probably our worst matchup is Manectric Garbodor or even Manectric Toad Garb, because it will shut down our Altaria that we play in here to get rid of our own weakness. However, other than that glaring issue that we have in the deck, Emerald Break just really strong, doing 30 times the number of your own bench Pokemon. We have Skyfield so that we can have up to 8, and that means that we can knock out almost everything in the format. Maybe not a Whale Lord, but pretty much everything you can one-shot with Mega Rayquaza, and that's why we're building a deck around him, essentially. So, supporting him, we have the 3 Shaman EX. Shaman with Setup allows us to draw our hand back up to 6. Very fantastic, amazing EX that we've been introduced in the new set. It's fantastic for helping us set up the board in terms of our hand, and also because he's physically a bench Pokemon to help increase the output of Mega Rayquaza. He also has the attack Sky Return, doing 30 and putting all cards attached back into the hand. This is another way we can help defend ourselves against Seismitoad, because we essentially cancel out the damage that Toad's doing. It's very rare that it's going to hit 110 in a turn, so we can just keep poking for 30 with Sky Return, picking up the DC again and going into maybe a different Shaman, so then we can do the same cycle next turn. And it basically means that Seismitoad's doing no damage and not really knocking out anything until we get our strategy online. Remembering that we have Virizion and we also have Munna in here to try and send Toad to sleep, there will be times where they miss a turn of item lock on us, and then we can really set up our board a lot nicer. So here we are, we have the 2 Virizion EX, Verdant Wind of course protecting us against poison. Very important for the Rayquaza. It means that Toad can't really hit knockouts on us very nicely at all. It also means that even Yveltal struggle to hit one-shots without a bunch of energy on it. So, those are the 2 main decks that like to poison things. Also, notably Gengar. If Gengar Wobbuffet becomes a thing, which I've also profiled on the channel if you've not seen that already, Verdant Wind can stop at least the poison from Gengar, because Verdant Wind is effective when Gengar's still in the active before it switched to the bench back into the Wobbuffet. So, at least the maths is kind of harder for Gengar to deal with, thanks to Virizion. Then we have 2 Munna in here. Munna's a fantastic card. Because we're flooding the bench, we may as well slap a couple of these in the deck. Especially because we have Virizion. It means that if we flip Tails on Munna, it won't affect our guy. But essentially, for those of you who don't know, long distance hypnosis, flip a coin. If heads, we send the opponent's active to sleep. If tails, we send our own Pokemon to sleep. Obviously, the idea is we'll cancel it out with Virizion if we flip badly. But also we have 2 that we can both put on the bench, so each turn we essentially have a 75% chance of sending something to sleep. Or if we have just 1 on the field, it's the 50-50 of course. This is fantastic for early game when maybe we've not got the perfect setup, if we're being disrupted with different types of things like hammers or headringers, or even just stuff like Wobbuffet. We can still go for the Munna to try and send stuff to sleep and buy ourselves a couple of turns. It's also good in the mirror match if we're missing KOs as well. It's very rare that you will be with Rayquaza versus other Rayquazas because you're both going at super speed. But every now and then you can send something to sleep to try and buy yourself a turn. Following up from this, we're having 3 Execute in the deck. Execute's propagation makes it very valuable to us. It means we can research 3 Pokemon from the discard pile once Skyfield is taken off the field. So all we need to do is find Skyfield, propagate 3 times, and there's our new 3 bench Pokemon to hit up to 8 again so that we can kill Megas once again. Also, throughout the game, we can propagate stuff into our hands to fulfill costs such as Ultra Ball and Comp Search. Very, very useful. There's also another reason why I like this card. It's because we play Battle Compressor in here. I'll get to it in a moment. But essentially, it's a really easy way of finding 3 Pokemon to fit onto the bench straight away. So it's pretty much using it like a Pokemon collector to find 3 Executes to help the attack get powered up really quickly from Emerald Break. It means that we're not so focused on getting Ultra Ball after Ultra Ball to find our Pokemon. We also have Battle Compressor to find these 3 really easily. Next up, we've got a 1-1 line of Altaria. This is our only real defense against Manectric. It means also Raichu. There's some mirror matches where your opponent would like to play a 1-1 or even a 2-2 Raichu in their Rayquaza build to try and kill other Rayquazas and stuff easily, and also because it's a non-EX attacker, of course, that threatens us. So Altaria at least cancels that out. It will cancel out most Manectric builds unless they are playing it with Garbodor, which some will be doing, and that's really the only threat that this deck has. We can't really handle that other than trying to send it to sleep now and again, and trying to trade prize for prize with multiple Rayquazas. So Manectric's a fairly difficult matchup, definitely with the Garbodor, but the Altaria can help out until they find that Garbodor or something of the sort. Next we have Mr. Mime, our final Pokemon, just to shield our own Executes to help us against Landorus matchups, of course, because otherwise they would pick us off very happily. Also Mega Latios, it can kill Shaymins for fun and basically outtrade us sometimes, so Mr. Mime at least forces them to catcher us out or something like that to buy us a turn or 2, so Mime is very useful in here. As you can see, we've got plenty of Pokemon to fill up our bench. We have the recurring propagations as well for when Skyfield hits the discard pile, so I really like the number of Pokemon in here. It seems like a lot, but it sort of works for me. Next up, we've got Comp Search. Pretty obvious why that's in there. Like I say, the 2 Battle Compressor. It serves more functions than just getting those eggs in the discard pile. It can also get Grass Energy in the discard pile for Mega Turbo. It can get Supporters in the discard pile for VS Seeker. And it can get Junk in the discard pile as well. If you're up against other Rayquaza builds, you're not going to need your full Skyfield. You can start dumping them away with Battle Compressor so that you draw into stuff you do want rather than those sorts of things. Next up, we have 2 switches. I feel like 2 is the right number. There are some things with retreat costs around here that would be annoying to get captured, but for the majority of the time, we're going to be using switches less than other decks because we have Virizion to safeguard us from poison and sleep and all of those things that we would normally want to switch out of. So really, switch is just in here if we don't start with Rayquaza and we need to get it active for a turn 1 attack, if we're going second, of course. Or, like I say, if anyone's trying to catch or stall us, we have those switches in there. Next up, we've got 3 VS Seekers. VS Seeker respamming supporters. Obviously, it's very good with Battle Compressor. That combination makes VS Seeker live from as early as turn 1. Then we have 3 Mega Turbo. It's essential for getting that turn 1 attack on Rayquaza. Also, we can set up Rayquazas in 1 turn with Mega Turbo. So I like the 3 count in here. It can get clunky at 4. Also, I don't really have space for 4. I'd like to find a 4th in honesty, but Mega Turbo at 3 I feel like is pretty okay. Next up, we have the 4 Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball gets our Pokemon out for free, basically, if we have our eggs available to us. Very essential for filling up our bench as quickly as possible. Also, like I say, you can get Grass Energy in the discard pile for Mega Turbo. And just help us lower our hand size down for the Shaymins to make them stronger. So, really like Ultra Ball at a 4 count in here. Finally, for trainers, we're playing the 3 Rayquaza Spirit Link. Pretty obvious for this card. It means we don't have to waste our turns Mega Evolving. On to supporters now. We're playing 1 Trump card. Trump card recycles our Pokemon if we're under different locks. If we're under stuff like Silent Lab, it means we can't propagate to fill back up our bench. Also, Garbodor locks us. Wobbuffet also locks the propagate ability, so unless we Lysander out the Wobbuffet, we can also use Trump card to actually refill our Pokemon count, because if we don't have the use of eggs, we can run out of bench slots to keep hitting these one-shots on things. A lot of the time you won't, but Lysander Trump card there just for the backup net. Also, because Rayquaza can fall prey to Hammers and all that stuff. I know Toad is going to be popular however we see it, and hammers are always going to be popular for a deck that needs 3 energy to attack. So Lysander's trump card can pick up our fairly low energy count and recycle it quite nicely. Next up, like I say, to Lysander, the first thing I'll mention is that we can get out of Wobbuffet lock with this. You can also get out of Trevenant lock if that's going to be a thing, because they have Wallies, of course, now to do it turn 1, which is quite disruptive in fairness. For the most part, we can also just kill whatever we need at the right time. If they're trying to throw up Safeguarders or Shields or anything like that, Aegislash even can be a problem for this deck. Lysander can just get them out of the active position to pick off other EXs and stuff like that. Pretty useful. Next up, to Winona. Winona, really important. It can search out Altaria. It can search out Rayquaza and Shaymins, of course. For the most part, we're going to be finding those. And I really like it in here. It just helps us set up with Shaymin and sets up our board. So, yeah, pretty useful. Next up, we've got the 2 Colrus. Colrus gets really strong with Rayquaza. If we've got a full bench of 8, that's at least 8 cards that we're getting from Colrus. So already it's a really strong supporter. Of course, your opponent's going to play at least 1 on their bench. Most of the time it's going to be 4, 5, 6. Even thanks to Skyfield, you can get up to 16 cards of Colrus. So it gets really, really strong in here. Following up from that, the last 4 supporters we're playing, for Juniper. Juniper just a recycle. Pretty obvious. We get to see a fresh 7 cards and mill through the deck quite quickly. As you can see, we've got a fairly low count of supporters. What's that? Is that 11? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11? Yeah, 11 count of supporters. I like it being fairly low because we have Shaymin to help us draw cards. And the worst thing you want is to Shaymin yourself into like 4 more supporters. Then you're sort of dead and you can't really do much else with your hand. With a low count like this, we're going to see it often enough thanks to the support of Shaymin and VS Seeker. But we're not ever going to be overly clumped with supporters in our hand. So I really like it being at 11. Finally, we're playing for Skyfield. We need to max this out to bounce stuff like Silent Lab. Also, we can recycle it up against stuff like Groudon or anything that just plays a high count of stadiums, really. I feel like Stadium Wars are going to be really important, so you can't really skimp out on Skyfield. It's your means of output, so I can't see going lower than 4 ever in a Skyfield-centric deck. Finally, for energy, we're going for 4 DCE and 4 grass energy. The 4 grass may seem pretty low, but like I say, we've got Battle Compressor to help search it out so that we can get Turbo, Mega Turbo going as quickly as possible. So it seems pretty low, but it recycles itself quite nicely, and there's different ways to find the card anyway. So I feel like it works for me. Also, again, it's that old thing with Shaymin. You don't want to be drawing into multiple energies too often, because then, like I say, you can't carry on with your board setting up. So we want to have a fairly low count of this so that we can keep drawing through our deck nicely. So yeah, that is the deck, guys, overall. I think this build of Rayquaza, it's pretty good in the mirror match, because every now and then we can get a Munna off. Definitely on turn 1 it can be effective. If we're going second and we Munna them, and it gets a heads, of course, they can miss an attack, and then we have the incentive. And even on turn 2, sometimes we can stop stuff like Seismitoad getting Quaking Punches. We can force them to miss attacks. In the mirror match, it's not too crucial, really, the Munna, but it can help out. For the most part, anything that's not going to be, for whatever reason, when Rayquaza's not one-shotting something, if it is Toad, if it is some sort of disruptive deck, bear in mind that Wobbuffet can be sent asleep against the Munna as well, so we can lock that into play and stop stuff like Donphan and Gengar getting attacks off consistently. Munna can be really helpful. Like I say, when we're missing KOs, we have the option to send them to sleep every now and again. And it makes a lot of sense to be put in here. Also, the Virizion really helps some Seismitoad matchup. The main weaknesses of this build that I'm playing right now, Safeguarders are definitely a problem. We have nothing to attack with, really. I guess we could Seed Bomb for 20 or Wing Attack for 30, but that's about it, really. So we'd have to catch around those. Also, Aegislash, a real problem. Only playing 4 grass energy means we'd probably have to 3-shot it with Intensifying Burn. Not very efficient at all, really. So, yeah, those are the 2 real problems of the deck. And obviously, like I say, Manectric Garbodor's a threat. Although we will probably get the incentive, because against Garbodor decks, unless they're using like a Wally to set up, we'll be able to get at least a board of like 8 cards. So we'll start rocketing through their deck and take the early incentive, take an early 2 prizes, definitely. It's just if they can respond quickly enough with Garbodor and Energy into their Mega Manectric, Pretty interesting matchup. I don't feel like it's unwinnable, especially because we can be so speedy. Against stuff like Silent Lab, it's kind of more tricky. We have a slow setup, but we basically need to find Skyfield to try and block that out of the way. Unless they're playing Ninetales with Silent Lab, that's a very difficult matchup as well. The combination is very difficult to get around. And what else is there? I guess there's Toad variants. Toad Puff is fine because we'll always have Virizion. Toad Garb is slightly harder, but most of the time we can out-hit them with an Intensifying Burn anyway. And try and use Munna in the before turns, before they get Garbodor out, to try and allow ourselves trainers. So overall, there's loads of different ways of beating Rayquaza. However, this build is trying to help our Toad matchup, which otherwise would be pretty poor. I feel like we have a fairly strong one for the most part. So there it is, guys. My first of many Rayquaza builds. I hope you followed my thought process in terms of how we can beat Toad decks. And also how we're going to try and outbeat stuff like Manectric and stuff like Silent Lab. All of these threats that this deck can face. We're trying to max out our outs in terms of trying to cover our backs in those different matchups as well. So I hope you enjoyed. Like I say, leave your comments down below on what you thought about the deck. And I'll be back soon with another couple of Rayquaza builds. And as it is May the 4th be with you.